order. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rouse.
Here.
Madam Chair Snedden.
Here. Thank you. Do we have any public comment not on the agenda?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Then with that, I would like to invite staff presentation on project labor agreements issues.
Good afternoon, Ordinance Committee. I'm Rebecca Bjork, Public Works Director. I have Dan Henschke, our Assistant City Attorney, and Brian DeMore, the City Engineer, with me here today. And we are here at Council's direction to provide information about a project labor agreement. That didn't work. Nicole, I screwed it up. Here we go. Sorry about that. No, it was user error. Okay. Okay, let's try that. Sorry about that. I'll give it a second try. Today we're going to talk about project labor agreements, what they are, what are the typical components, how would a project labor apply within the city of Santa Barbara and the type of business we do, and then review the proposed ordinance alternatives that Mr. Henschke has laid out in the ordinance report. So a project labor agreement is a collective bargaining agreement that is negotiated between the city and the unions prior to the issuance of a bid. So it's pre-negotiated, and then the terms and conditions of that agreement are contained within any work performed for the projects being considered. A community workforce agreement is a component of a project labor agreement. It is a portion of the agreement that explains how workers are hired, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Typical components of a project labor agreement are working conditions, hiring procedures, wages and benefits, management rights, work stoppages, dispute resolution, and frequently drug and alcohol testing of workers is an included provision. One of the advantages of a project labor agreement is it establishes uniform work conditions. It typically covers work hours, holidays, meal periods, breaks, overtime and double time pay shifts, and shift differential pay. It also is very useful for projects that have specialized work provisions, such as 24-hour work, in that it can provide specifications for those specialized shift work. The hiring procedures include a number of things: a referral system, how employees are referred to contractors, core employees of the contractor. They allow a targeted worker participation, and then also there are some exemptions to those hiring project procedures. So I'll talk about those briefly. Under the hiring procedures, one of the core elements of a project labor agreement is that there is a union referral system used exclusively for obtaining craft labor. You do not have to be a union employee to be employed under a project labor agreement. However, you do have to register with the hiring hall in order to be applied. And this is really where the local community workforce element comes in that it allows people within the local community to register at the local hiring hall and be the source of the labor for contract employees, for these types of contracts. Core employees are the employees, non-union employees of the contractor. And they are typically at the more supervisory level, such as superintendents or shift managers. And project labor agreements generally limit the number of core employees that a contractor can bring to a project. Usually what I've seen is in the 4 to 5 range. So these might be people who are permanently on staff with a contractor. The contractor, after they use their core employees, and this is one of the things that would need to be negotiated, is required to hire union through the hiring hall for the remainder of those types of positions. The other opportunity with a project labor agreement is that you can do targeted worker participation, which would include goals for participation by targeted categories like local workers, specify the number or percentage of employees that need to be apprentices, people who are at risk, minority and women. You can include provisions for those types of performance in the project labor agreement. There are some exemptions to use of a project labor agreement. It does not cover work performed by city employees. It does not cover professional services contracts or the off-site manufacture and handling of materials. One item that the labor typically is covered by a project labor agreement, the types of labor, but that the city has historically not bid is construction and inspection and material testing. Those are jobs that are held by unions. However, the city's past practice has been to hire people based on their specific skills and ability rather than just the type of work that's being performed. And we have traditionally done professional service agreements for those. So that is one thing that would need to be negotiated in a project labor agreement and have the agreement of the unions if city wanted us to continue with our established practice of choosing people to perform these services based on their skills. Wages and benefits do not really vary very much for the employee under a project labor agreement because all of our work is covered by prevailing wage. So we are required to pay prevailing wage on all of our projects, and prevailing wage laws also require that the contractor pay fringe benefits. Union contractors do provide fringe benefits to their employees through union trusts. Under a project labor agreement, the non-union contractors are required to pay to the union trust for the employees working on that project labor agreement. If the employee does not vest with the union, they would not get the benefit of those contributions made on their behalf. Project labor agreements usually include provisions about work stoppages that will prohibit strikes and picketing or work disruption, and include dispute resolution to allow work to continue to move forward in a timely manner without slowing down or stopping work. It's one of the advantages and one of the reasons that project labor agreements are usually used for larger projects where there's more opportunity. The work's going on over a number of months or years, and the likelihood of a stoppage is higher. In the applicability to the city of Santa Barbara, these are usually used for bigger and more complex projects. Each one needs to be separately negotiated because there are the legal components and the technical components. Many other areas have exempted maintenance, repair, and in some cases right-of-way projects because those are more commonly done and those are some of the things that have been exempted in other areas. There's an executive order issued under the Obama administration that recommended the use of project labor agreements for projects over $25 million, identifying those as substantial capital projects where the use of a project labor agreement is appropriate. We think that for the city of Santa Barbara, that would be an appropriate threshold as well. It would allow us to concentrate these agreements on the larger, more complicated projects. And since 2014, we have issued 123 low bid projects. The average mile is for the prime contractor is 63 miles, so relatively local. And a third of those contracts have been issued to union prime contractors. If we did limit this to projects of over 25 million, some of the foreseeable projects that we are expecting to work on the next several years are, of course, the police station, the electrical upgrades at the El Estero wastewater treatment plant, and then potentially a little further out, a potable reuse or changes to our water supply, which would be very significant projects. There are probably others as well that I'm not thinking of, but these were the ones that came quickly to mind.
Just briefly, may I ask a question on that, on the potable reuse? In the staff report, it talks about water projects not being included. How does that fit in?
So the water projects are under the charter have a provision to allow a different contracting. So you would leave the council some discretion. You could either direct us to use a project labor agreement for those projects. We very, very, very seldom use that alternative approach for water agreements, with the exception of it does allow us to design build projects. So if the council decided to take a design build approach to a potable reuse, that might be a situation in which a project labor agreement would not be used. Again, we did do that for the desal plant, but that is a very unusual approach for the city. We typically do design, bid, build. Staff's recommendation for a project labor agreement in terms of defining the local workforce would be the tri-counties. We think that is the labor pool that we currently pull from. I know we have a lot of contractors from Ventura, Santa Maria, and some from San Luis Obispo. So that would be staff's recommendation. The cost of implementation, we really are not firm on what that would be, but based on our conversations with others, we believe it would take 3 to 6 months to negotiate a project labor agreement. We would need the assistance of expert legal and expert technical help. We estimate those costs to be about $50,000 to $100,000 each, and we expect staff time to be about twice that. So we're estimating costs would be $300,000 to $400,000 to negotiate. There are some additional costs to administer a PLA to make sure that the workforce provisions are being complied with. We already have administration costs for any of our projects to make sure that our contractors are complying with prevailing wage and other labor law requirements. So this would probably just be an addition to that, probably double that cost, but it's not a complete new cost. That takes us to the language for the proposed ordinance. Mr. Henschke has suggested 2 options if you wanted to direct staff to prepare an ordinance. The first would allow council to would have staff come to council on a case-by-case basis over a certain threshold for direction on whether that's a project that should be subject to a project labor agreement. So if we set the threshold, for instance, at $25 million, we would come and say, we're doing a police station for $25 million. Would you like us to be looking at a project labor agreement? Option B would be just setting a threshold, and any project over that amount would be subject to a project labor agreement. And then, of course, as laid out in the report, if there are other options that this committee would like us to explore, we would be happy to hear those as well. So that's the conclusion of our prepared presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. With that, we'll take questions from the committee before we're allowing plenty of time for public comment. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you clarify, is this project basically just to make sure that it increases local hiring for future construction?
One of the potential benefits of a project labor agreement is that it can increase your local hiring. Excuse me. But it does much more than that. It provides, as I went through a number of other conditions, it's a collective bargaining agreement, much like the city has with its employees. It sets the terms and conditions of the labor providing the construction projects for the city. So yes, the hiring, it doesn't specify that it will be local, but it says first preference will be to people being hired through the local hiring hall, rather than having people bring their core or normal workforce with them.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Bjork, you just talked about the local hiring hall. So there would be some kind of contribution to their, i.e. benefit system or whatever, the trust, I think it was the union trust you said?
Yes.
Okay, and so if someone came in as a non-union worker, was hired by the hiring hall, but did not become a member of the union, they would have paid into the trust, or somebody would have paid into the trust on their behalf, but they don't necessarily become the beneficiaries of the trust benefits down the road. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Henschke, who's a better understanding of those. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, Councilmember Rouse, Basically, what you're saying is correct. Under a project labor agreement, the hiring is directed through the hiring hall. The payment of wages is through the union trust. And so the benefits, let me back up a little bit. Under state law, the prevailing wage laws include payment of prevailing wage and payment of what are called fringe benefits. A non-union contractor can pay the fringe benefits either as fringe benefits to the employees or a cash equivalent. And so under the project labor agreement, the payments for fringe benefits would go into the union trust. An employee who is a non-union employee would only get the benefit of those if they worked on a project or enough union projects long enough to vest in the trust benefit plan. So there could be a detriment to non-union employees who work on a project labor agreement for a short duration in terms of obtaining the benefit of the fringe benefits that are required under the prevailing wage law. That's a function of the nature of a project labor agreement, which is a agreement to go through the union to provide those benefits.
So someone with a particularly specialized skill, for example, as Bjork brought up the potable reuse or something that's a very specialized project, you could have somebody who has that skill set who currently works for a private contractor be brought on by them, the PLA, work for a brief time, so there would be the fringe benefits haven't been paid by the local contractor, the non-union contractor, and then in addition there'd be the union house contract benefits to be paid at that same time. Is that? That might be getting a little too in the weeds, but
I think that we might be confusing a little bit the difference between union dues and the payment and the collection of fringe benefits. I was just speaking as
fringe benefits.
But. Yeah, okay. If you're just talking about the fringe benefits, no PLA, non-union contractor, the employee gets either the fringe benefits from the contractor or the cash equivalent. If that non-union employee is working on a PLA project, the fringe benefits that would otherwise get paid to the worker get paid to the union trust. The employee will get the benefit of those payments if they vest in the union trust system. If they don't vest, then like with other fringe benefit systems, if you don't vest in it, you don't get the benefit of that payment.
And the last question began, and Ms. Bjork, you brought this up earlier about, and it's in the slide regarding a local community workforce agreement policy, which is how it was agendized in the beginning to us. And so your slide says it's a component of the PLA, and I wasn't really sure I grasped the difference in nomenclature, if there's a subset of the other, how that works.
That's correct. So for instance, the local community workforce requirement is the requirement to hire through the local hiring hall. There are a number of other components of a PLA, such as the core workers, that are not specifically directed at the local community workforce. Yeah, and
if I could follow up on that a little bit, Honorable Chair, Councilmember Rouse, the Community Workforce Agreement is a name that is sometimes given to project labor agreements. Project labor agreements can be called other things, such as project stability agreements, workforce stability agreements. They have different names for different reasons, but they're all the same basic structure, which is a pre-hire agreement between the entity, usually the entity, it can be a private contract, but usually the entity and the unions that establishes the relationship between the entity and the unions that will be carried out throughout the course of that project. And it, as Ms. Bjork mentioned, there are various components to the project labor agreement, and the use of local preference or local hire provisions is one of those components. I will say that with regard to local hire, there are legal restrictions related to mandatory use of, for example, residency requirements, percentage requirements for local workers, and those legal requirements sometimes cannot be avoided by a project labor agreement and have to be addressed and incorporated. An example, there are some federal and state grant programs that may preclude the use, for example, of mandatory local hiring requirements. Frequently, if you do have an entity does have a project labor agreement program, there will be an exclusion from that program if the project labor agreement would interfere with the entity's ability to obtain federal or state grant funding. And so that there's an exclusion that gets put into the project labor agreement, so it's carved out from the scope of coverage. And that is a common way of addressing some of the restrictions of the law on local hire. Local hire can get to be pretty complicated, but there is a benefit that you can require percentage objectives, good faith efforts to local hire, outreach programs, and other programs can be designed into the project labor agreement to enhance the ability to use local labor.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. One for the vesting. How long is a typical vesting period for a non-union employee working on a union job?
I don't know. You might be able to ask some of the union representatives that I'm sure are in the audience and would be making presentations.
Okay, I'll reserve that for that. And then does the employer still need to be paying for fringe benefits such as health benefits while also paying into the union pool for those fringe benefits? So in my understanding of healthcare benefits, for instance, you can't cycle in, cycle out, cycle in, cycle out. You're paying for the year for that benefit. How does that work for the employer?
I'm not sure exactly. What I do know is that with the PLA, this doesn't impact union contractors because they're already in the system. So the non-union contractor, they don't pay twice, but they do pay the fringe. If they're not providing the fringe benefits directly to the employee, the payments have to go into the union trust, like for if they had a 401k, it goes into the union trust. How it matches up on the health benefits, it's been years since I've had to look at that, and I did not look at it for this meeting.
Thank you. I was also wondering for targeted worker participation for, say, or whatever the preference is, so they would need to be registered at the hall, and I'm wondering what the requirements are. Do they need to be unemployed to be registered? Do they have to pass certain tests to be registered?
I believe the answer is no. Any qualified worker can register. The specifics as to what their registration entails, again, I would recommend that you direct that to a union representative who can more completely and honestly answer the question.
Okay, will do. And then one more question, that maybe some more details about some local hire alternatives. If that was the goal of council, what would be some other ways to achieve that?
There are a number of different kinds of outreach programs that have been established. I can talk about one that I'm personally familiar with. It was one that was established by the San Diego County Water Authority, and the city of San Diego had a similar program. It was called a Small Contractor Outreach and Opportunity Program. What it was a requirement of the procurements that the contractor demonstrated that they had made a good faith effort to outreach to both local businesses, small businesses, local businesses, and also minority and veterans contractors. It doesn't establish a specific target level in terms of a qualification or disqualification, but you have to demonstrate that you've made a good faith effort to outreach, to let the contractors know that the bidding opportunity is available. And it's generally what it is a way to get particularly small specialty subcontractors and local specialty subcontractors involved in the bidding process so that they have an opportunity to compete and to get the jobs. And those kinds of programs are fairly common, and there's a variety of different examples. The example that was in the reading material was a program very similar to the one that we had at the Water Authority that was used by the County of Alameda for their projects. So there are a number of examples, but that's how those work.
And actually, I have one more question. I just want to make sure I understand this. For the cost of implementation, is that $300,000 to $400,000 additional cost for each project?
Chairson, we are estimating that, and some of that would be sunk cost in terms of staff salaries. Of course, our engineering model is that our salaries do charge against the project. We would anticipate needing expert help at least on the first negotiation of the first one. Whether or not we would gain sufficient knowledge on how to negotiate these subsequently would remain to be seen. I expect we would come up to speed on them, but that, based on our conversations with others who are in the middle of or have recently negotiated that's sort of the best estimate we could give you at this time.
Okay. Does that take into account also in the staff report? It said there may be delays in project timelines of up to a year or more than a year. Does it take that into account also?
If they were very near term, it could delay it. Again, our experience in talking to others is that it's 3 to 6 months. If the council did go forward with a project labor agreement, we would recommend that for each of those, council give us a pretty firm deadline on when to get it done by, because that is helpful in keeping people on task to come to agreement.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had some other questions, but I'll save them, reserve them. I want to make sure that we have time for public comment, which, unless there are other questions from the committee at this point. Okay, so we'll open up to public comment. We do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak, and if we don't complete this today, we'll carry it over. So we will start with Gary Moselle.
I'm Gary Mosel. First, I'd like to say, if you haven't voted today, please go out and vote. Very important. I'm going to say that I'm in favor of the PLA. Option B would be the one. Very micro.
I am so sorry.
So the microphone wasn't
your
on.
microphone was not on.
Can you be?
I will reset your time, and if you could
I'd
start at the beginning.
appreciate
I
that.
apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So I am Gary Mosel. I am a longtime resident here in Santa Barbara, and I also am a contractor. I'm the owner of Goleta Plumbing and Mechanical. We actually started right here in Santa Barbara in 1933. I haven't been here all the time, but I have owned it, and I have been in charge of it for 40 years. And I have done many projects here on for the city of Santa Barbara. Cater water treatment plant. I've done reclaimed water. First reclaimed water project was done by our company, and all of this has been done through union labor. I am a public works contractor. I'm very familiar with public works. That's my niche. I could tell you that the DRI requirements are going to be exactly the same with the PLA as it is with anything else. The fringe benefits are going to be the same. If you're a non-union contractor and you bid on a public works project, currently you have to pay into an apprenticeship program, which is part of the fringe benefits anyways. If you have health care, that's going to be paid through your own company's health care. That's not going to change. You don't necessarily have to put it into the union's health care package. So that won't change. But what does change is the quality of workmanship. And in a non-union sector, the quality of workmanship is way down. And I can tell you that I have taken over many projects that have been non-union workers where I've had to completely tear out the union work, and these delay projects extensively. So I just would like to say that I am for option B, where projects over the amount that you specify would be most desirable, not one that you can pick and choose. So I just want to reiterate that there is a line in here about specialty contractors, that they would be impacted the most, or they would be impacted, and I don't believe that's true, because I am a specialty contractor, and I don't think that this PLA would impact me in one bit.
Thank you. Can I clarify, is it option A or option B that has the, I'm showing that option A has the threshold amount, am I?
They both have a threshold amount. The difference is, with option A, it's a case-by-case determination. Option B, it's any project over the threshold.
Okay. Thank you. Under option B, there's an A and a B. I think that's what I was looking at. Yes.
The subdivisions of the section.
Thank you. David Baldwin, followed by John Hughes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity here. I'm David Baldwin. I work for the Labor Management Compliance Council, and our aim is to maintain high standards in the public works arena. So I work here in Santa Barbara County, sort of on the front lines, I guess you could say, of the public works contracting. And I'm here to support this project labor agreement. First off, I'd just like to say that the plan that the building trades representatives are putting forward is a tried and true plan over many years, has a long history of success for cities like Santa Barbara. And with these agreements, work that I do, the compliance work, sort of goes away. So maybe I'm talking myself out of a job here. But it's important, I think, for the city because under these agreements, you get sort of everybody on one level playing field, everybody with one set of rules, sort of a constitution, if you want to call it, on the job site. And that captures a lot of efficiency for you as a city because your projects tend to have the best way to come out on time, on budget, all the things that are important to you, as well as the community benefits portions that your staff talked about when we call out groups, women or people of color, other people that have barriers to employment. These agreements do very well. So a couple things I just wanted to address that staff had brought up real quickly. Nearly every city that has a PLA or has used a PLA in California that I know of, the threshold's far below 25 million. I think that number you would probably want to talk a lot about. And regarding an agreement on a job-by-job basis or a citywide basis, I think it would make very good sense to go on a citywide basis, specifically given the staff's discussion about a cost to negotiate these agreements. I don't think it would make sense to negotiate over and over and over the same type of agreement. Rather, you could do a citywide agreement and capture the benefit without the extra cost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Hughes, followed by Kevin Norton.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm John Hughes, Councilman. I'm John Hughes. I'm the Labor Compliance Officer for the electrical contractors and the electrical workers in Santa Barbara County. Part of our normal oversight of public works in the county is to collect and maintain a database of bidder information on all public works. Last week I sent you an email with a study that we put together of 10 large capital improvement projects totaling $340 million. They ranged between $78 million and $9 million. And so what I did in that comparison is I went and looked at all of the subcontractor lists and where all the contractors were from, including the prime contractor, and provided you some clarity as to who's actually performing the work and as it relates to the contractors who are awarded the work. regarding Santa Barbara contractors, local Goleta area, the South County, 90% of the contractors on this study are not from the area. When it comes to, if you're looking at local perspective being Santa Barbara County, 84% are not from the area. And as staff recommended, looking at a tri-county perspective, 2/3 of the contractors are not from the tri-counties. So, when any of these contractors come into town and they're awarded the project, they bring their workforce with them from wherever they're from. That's normal construction practice. These local contractors do the same when they're working out of the area. So this is normal. When the contractors say that, hey, we don't need to do this, we pay prevailing wage to everybody, that is a requirement under Public Works to pay prevailing wage for all projects that exceed $1,000. But this doesn't do anything for qualifications. The contractors are not required to provide any qualifications for their workers under current law, under general law. They are only required to pay according to the work that they're performing. So this should concern you. If you're requiring to pay, which all public bodies do, pay the prevailing wage, the qualifications should come with it. By instituting a project labor agreement, we can ensure that that all the journeyman level workers on the jobs have those qualifications. They've gone through bona fide apprenticeship programs and have graduated. We've had similar arguments with the non-union. Excuse me?
You are at time. Do you have one final thought? And then I have a question for you.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. So would you like to speak to the question of a typical vesting period for fringe benefits?
I couldn't speak to all of the different crafts because every craft's got their own plans, but typically with, I would say, defined benefit pension plans, federally regulated, I think it would be an average 3 to 5 years for vesting period. But that's not specific to non-union employees. It's everybody covered under the plan. So if a non-union contractor were to have a defined benefit plan, it would apply to his employees with or without a labor agreement. So that's a federal requirement. When it comes to cash type contributions like 401ks, those go into a 401k account, regardless of the affiliation. And when it comes to health and welfare type plans for health coverage, the requirements, like any other health plan, is to work a certain number of hours, typically 100, 140 hours, 30 hours, something like that, in order to get a month's worth of coverage. It's typically the way that works.
Thank you. Would you also like to speak to, if you'd like to, on what the requirements are to be listed as an available employee from the books or from the hall?
As far as signing out of work books, yeah, if you are seeking employment and you're qualified, in the case of electricians, if you're a qualified electrician and you come down to the IBEW in Buellton, we're centrally located here in the county, then you can sign. We're highly regulated by the federal government, by the Department of Labor, and union affiliation cannot be a requirement to sign the out of work books. We have to treat everybody equally.
So it's a requirement to be out of work. Is that one of the requirements?
Yes, to be out of work. Now, as far as if there's some kind of registration requirement or something like that in the project labor agreement, what those terms are part of the negotiations.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin Norton, followed by Kate Mergen.
Good afternoon. My name's Kevin Norton. I'm here to speak in favor of the CWA. I've had a lot of experience with CWAs in Los Angeles and Orange counties, where most of the larger awarding agencies have been using this project management tool for many years. In fact, they've built the port, LAX, metro, schools, colleges, stadiums, landmarks, theaters, high-rise projects, as well as street lighting and solar. There's $200 billion worth of projects covered by that in Los Angeles County and in Orange County. I'd like to share with you some comments from Mark Hovatter, who's ran the LA Unified School District with over $28 billion worth of projects. They've got the largest and longest running program with the PLA that I'm aware of. And there's a larger one at Metro, but it's the longest running. And LA Unified's done everything from job order contracting, where they'll come in and hang a chalkboard or put a doorknob on, to design bid build or design build schools ground up. So the whole gamut. So the question, do PLAs limit competition? No. 1/3 of repeat contractors are non-union. So 25,000 projects. People will come up with all sorts of facts and figures. These are empirical numbers from an agency that's used a PLA in California. Are they bad for small business? No, we've had both our small business program and small contractors and large contractors. Do they increase labor costs? No, because prevailing rate is required on the project anyway. Do they require the prevailing rate? Yes. Does it increase construction costs? No, PLAs do not drive costs. Other attributes, commitment to local workforce, access to a qualified and skilled workforce, access to labor management apprenticeship programs, safe job sites, and structured dispute resolutions are all part of the project labor agreement system. And finally, I'd like to share some reports with you that you can peruse when you want to go to sleep tonight. It'll help you go right to sleep. But number one, right on the top, is local worker participation at LAX. So we've got a project labor agreement there. The 19,000 workers have worked there. 5,855, because of the local hire requirement in the PLA, are local people. And that's something that needs to really be at the forefront. And that's why you want to have an agency-wide project labor agreement, because you won't get your bang for your buck doing project by project here and there. You'll get it by going agency-wide.
Thank you.
With that, thank you for your time.
We'll have Kate Mergen, followed by Richard Markison.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Council. My name is Kate Mergen. I am the Vice President of Government Affairs for AGC of California. The AGC is an organization of construction firms and industry-related companies committed to improving our physical environment through our dedication to the principles of skill, integrity, and responsibility. We have been negotiating solid, multifaceted master labor agreements with the construction trades crafts for nearly 100 years statewide. AGC of California represents hundreds of contractors, tens of thousands of employees, and tens of millions of union man-hours in California. We are proud of our tradition of negotiating agreements that honor our workforce, meeting the needs of public owners, and implementing appropriate programming and practices to ensure compliance for our members. But I am here today to convey AGC of California's position regarding the implementation of a project labor agreement. PLAs provide regulations and guidelines for projects throughout the state. However, AGC opposes the imposition of a project labor agreement developed by municipalities or public agencies. To be successful, labor contracts should be negotiated between employers and their workforce bargaining units directly. One of the fundamental philosophies that exists throughout our association is that the company's protocol regarding labor negotiations should not play a role in the award of a project. AGC reaffirms its commitment to free and open competition in all public construction markets, and we believe that the appropriate mechanism for public owners to ensure that employees are paid fair wages and benefits exists through prevailing wage, and we encourage proactive partnerships between our partners, industry, and companies to reach other objectives such as local hire and small business and minority business utilization in these areas. So we'd like to continue to educate and advocate for those members in both areas, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Richard Markison, followed by Eric Kristen.
Good morning, I guess good afternoon, council members. Richard Markson. I'm here on behalf of the Western Electrical Contractors Association. We're a statewide association that is approved by the U.S. Department of Labor and the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards to train and indenture apprentices. One of the things that your excellent staff report did not touch upon, but one of the earlier speakers mentioned, is that most PLAs discriminate against apprenticeship programs that are operated under what is called the unilateral apprenticeship training criteria, and that is because they require that only apprentices from a JATC can be deployed under a PLA, which is bad for us because WECA operates the second largest electrician program in California with over 700 apprentices registered statewide. One of the other things that a couple of you mentioned and asked questions about, which your staff report covered, is the actual impact to the non-union worker who is forced to operate under a project labor agreement. They actually take home less money. Now, people will say, well, that's not possible because it's all based upon prevailing wage. But as your staff comments pointed out, it's based upon a total package against which the contractor can make wage payments, and then they take a variety of credits for the fringe benefit plans like the health and welfare plan and the pension plan. For instance, for electricians in this county, the fringe benefit plan for the health and welfare is $10.65. Well, on the open market using the ACA, for example, example, a gold PPO plan can be purchased for about $5.11. So if the contractor is providing that, the additional $5 goes directly to the employee's wage. And similarly, the discussion about the lost benefits for the lost pension benefit, the pension contribution is $9.48. So if they don't work for the 3 to 5 years to vest, they lose $9.48 per hour for that entire period of time that they've been working on your job. This is unconscionable for a public agency to consider a proposal that actually takes money out of the employee's check. There have been fair PLAs that have been discussed that allow an employer who has a current fringe benefit plan to use that in lieu of contributing to the union's fringe benefit plan. And there are programs that if they have a 401k that immediately vests, that they can take that credit and do not have to contribute it to the union pension plan, which is conceivably going to be lost. At the very least, you should make sure that apprentices from any state-approved apprenticeship program and that a fair element for pension and benefits is negotiated. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Kristen, followed by Ken Oplinger.
Good morning. My name is Eric Kristen. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Fair Employment and Construction. We were formed 20 years ago by union and non-union contractors solely to oppose project labor agreements. What you need up here is an option C. An option C is to continue your current bidding practices that allow for fair and open competition and do away with the idea of imposing discriminatory provisions on non-union contractors. Unfortunately, that doesn't appear to be even an option here. What is going on here is we have a council member who's trying to rush something through before he leaves office that will benefit big labor special interest, handicap their competition by holding them to provisions which are both explicitly and implicitly discriminatory, some of which you've just heard admitted here. Workers will lose money. And you're being asked to do this in less than 90 days on an issue that you're clearly, just by your questions, still learning about. And as studies have shown, could add 20% to the cost of your projects. Gee, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? We have one side that represents less than 15% of the construction workforce in this state, in this country. The Bureau of Labor Statistics are quite clear. Women and men wake up on a daily basis, and 86.4% of them choose to work in a union-free environment in the construction industry every day. This isn't 1930 anymore. This is 2018. I hold 2 union cards. My father retired out of the union. I represent union contractors who sit on my board as well as non-union contractors. A project labor agreement is welfare imposed by a group of people who don't want their competition to be able to bid on a level playing field with them. How can you justify forcing a worker to pay health, welfare, and pension benefits that unless they vest, by the way, why are they having to change their benefit packages at all? Why is that imposition being placed on them? By a special interest group, only they get to negotiate that. Why is that even being done? Assuming it is done, that worker loses the money. It's gone. All for the promise of what? Local hire. Is that even a problem? What are your numbers? What are your statistics? What are your statistics on local hire? The Tri-County area, that's considered local. What distance is that? Is that a problem that you've had? What numbers do they show? Here's what their local hire in every PLA that I've ever read says. Contractors will give their utmost effort to hire members from the prescribed zip codes. That's what you get in a project labor agreement in exchange for everything else that I've outlined. You're giving away the store in exchange for a vague promise of local hire, none of which can be mandated by law because it is illegal. Ask your staff, can you mandate by law that workers be hired locally? You cannot. That's what you're getting in exchange. Take your time on this. Do your homework. Do not succumb to the interest of big labor special interest and a council member who needs to get this done before he leaves office. It's outrageous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ken Oplinger, followed by Sharon Fritz.
Madam Chair, members of the council, Ken Oplinger from the Chamber of the Santa Barbara region. I guess the first question I have is I didn't hear in the presentation today what the problem is that we're trying to solve with this. I don't know about you, but as I drive around town, I don't get the sense that we have all these projects that are being built by labor from out of the area. I mean, every major project I can think of in the community in the last couple of years was built by a guy who's probably sitting in this room right now through his local contracting organization. So if we have some major problem with only being able to get projects done with out-of-town labor, I'd like to know what that is, because I don't know that we've ever actually had that discussion. And I guess I continue by saying that as I sort of look at the lay of the land right now, our situation is more that we're importing labor because we have to for all of the construction projects we have, especially after what we went through a year ago. So I'm not clear on why it is that we think we need to solve for this problem. The second part is, if the problem that we're trying to solve for, which we didn't hear about until the public testimony started, was that there's some sort of a quality problem, I'd also like to see what that is too. I mean, it's interesting some of the anecdotal information that you were provided, but if this is being put in place because we are trying to ensure that we're getting better quality projects than we're getting now, then let's see the information that tells us that going through this process is going to give us those better quality projects. And that's something your staff should be able to provide to you. And short of that, then I don't know that we can make the decision based on that either. So I think that that's got to be sort of the first question. What is it that we're trying to do here? Secondly, it's interesting that we're having this conversation today, since essentially 1 year ago today, the voters of the city of Santa Barbara approved the 1 cent sales tax increase. While I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee, I'll remind you that I am the chair of the Citizens Oversight Committee that you put together for that. And I can tell you that as one of the primary people out in the community helping to sell that and getting that approved, if I had known that this was the route we were going on, I'm not so sure that we would have had the wide support that we had for this. Why this was not part of the discussion when we were going through that process is beyond me, because it seems to me that this had to have been going on. There had to have been a conversation going on sort of underneath the current for us to be in the situation that we're in today. That should have been part of that discussion. The voters of the city approved that sales tax without the knowledge that this was the path we were going down, and so I think we need to keep that in mind. I just think there's a lot of other questions we still need to answer, and I hope that you will not rush this through, that we'll go through and we'll get those answers before we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Applegar, and good luck today. Thank you. Sharon Fritz, followed by Julie Beishoff.
I'm Julie Bischoff, and Sharon has given me her time.
Thank you. Give me just a moment to reset the timer for 4 minutes.
Thank you.
I mean to clarify with Mr. Oplinger, not good luck on his comments. We are neutral on that at this point, but good luck on his election.
Okay. All right. My name is Julie Bischoff, and I want to let you know that I was part of a 60-year-plus construction commercial union company in Santa Barbara. That was J.W. Bailey Construction Company. We belonged to 3 unions. At times, we belonged to 8 unions. I was the project manager and the controller. I did payroll, union reports, accounts receivable, payables, and handled the union annual audits of all the other agencies and the bonding companies. We had over 200 employees and did 6,500 plus projects throughout Santa Barbara and Ventura. I've also been a member of the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. As you've heard, the PLA agreements are, in my opinion, very unnecessary and very discriminatory. We have competent union and non-union subcontractors throughout our county that are able and qualified to bid on your project. What we have in place now is the prevailing wage agreements. They are fair. They level the playing field for the workers, the bidders, the contractors. I do not see any reason for the city of Santa Barbara, which is strapped for funds, to spend so much more money and time putting in place a union agreements that will not benefit 80% of the non-union contractors who exist in our counties. Our buildings are built beautifully here. If there is a problem, that gets fixed. But whether it's a union company or a non-union company has no determination on the quality of the work. I would like to ask you, if you were to have to bid on a project where you knew that you would have to pay for 2 medical policies at the same time. The money goes to the union. Your employee can probably never access it. It takes many hours working in the right quarters to qualify for that union medical care. So you as a non-union contractor must continue paying the medical policy that you have privately. The same thing applies to pension benefits. That money will go into your own private retirement accounts for your employees and then into the union benefits also. I want to ask you, would you pay for 2 medical insurance policies? Would you pay for 2 pension retirement funds, knowing you would virtually never be able to access the money you put in one of them? Please look further into these PLA agreements. Prevailing wage agreements were established by the state of California under the Department of Industrial Relations. They are adequate, and they specifically address what is needed in Santa Barbara. We don't need an expensive PLA agreement here at all. Your job, I believe, is that you've been elected to protect and to represent the people of Santa Barbara. If you put a PLA in place, you will be punishing the very taxpayers, private enterprises, union and non-union, the very entities that pay for the funds for the public payrolls and the public pensions of the employees of the city of Santa Barbara. Please, I respectfully ask you, take more time to do the research. And I've written you all a letter, and I've attached what is happening throughout the state, especially in San Diego Unified School District. It is a boondoggle of unbelievable proportions. Please, please look further into this. Don't punish us. Thank you.
Thank you. Earl Armstrong, followed by Michael Lopez.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Earl Armstrong. I have Armstrong Associates General Contractors here in Santa Barbara. I am one of your 2 largest general contractors. Both of them are non-union. I have done many projects in Santa Barbara over the 30 years my company has been here, and I have been in this community, my family, for over 100 years on it. Projects you'd be familiar with are Moxie, the Wolf Museum and Children's Center, the Arlington Theater, the Arlington Villages, Cottage Hospital. I have been working on Cottage Hospital for 30 years. Granted, a union contractor built the exterior. I built the interior. Those departments you use are what I built. The quality in those speaks for itself. We have also produced and are going to produce the Museum and Cultural Center for the Chumash, which is a $32 million project. Our bonding capacity is at $40 million. I think we're more than capable of doing most of the projects that you have here in town. I do Union Bank up and down the coast. I work with union contractors and not union contractors. Most of my employees are right here in Santa Barbara. The money we make here in Santa Barbara stays in Santa Barbara. To prove that, over the last 3 years, I have given to the nonprofits of Santa Barbara over $178,000 in donations to those nonprofits to help the community that I live in. I would see this as eliminating me from my ability to service my community that I have grown up and I have lived in and I have supported and I still give to. And I have a superior product that I've delivered over all these years. And you can go touch, feel it, and I guarantee you use it when you're in trouble. Cottage Hospital is top notch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Lopez, followed by Summer Hodges. Followed by Erwin Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Sneddon, and council members. My name is Michael Lopez. I'm the business manager at UA Local 114. We're the plumbers and pipe fitters, HVAC. We have a technical training facility up in Buellton. I think a lot of these statistical anomalies were answered by the gentleman from the IBEW, and they're public record.
thought that my role here would be to try to be informative. This is the chain letter that was asked to be filled out by the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. I got a couple points I'd like to just address that might help you out, and it answers some of the very smart questions you guys asked at the beginning. My company does not bid or work on construction contracts that require or a business to sign a project labor agreement. That's true, because most contractors in Santa Barbara simply don't carry the high level of insurance and liability to handle these $50 million projects. That's a fact. And probably would be helpful, talk to the Santa Maria Valley Contractors Association. They have the same illusion or delusion, if you will, about this North County Jail project. It simply didn't come to fruition. The local contractors simply didn't show up or weren't qualified. So that's an anomaly. Number two, our workers can go to work at unions at any time and ask to be dispatched with a job with a unionized company. That also is not true. The one thing that we're trying to strive here for is a level of high qualifications for employees. Let's face it, on the other side, there are none. The only people that are doing any kind of qualifications is if they're mandated by the state. The IBEW mandates a certain level of training for their folks. We do the same thing internally. The organized labor building trades internally have a system that requires and mandates specific training for all of these roles. So what you see is a qualified journeyman. When you're talking about a qualified person showing up on the job, the term is a journeyman. Ask these people what qualifies their people to be journeymen. They simply don't have it. It doesn't exist. A project labor agreement means that local employees lose their jobs. That's untrue. The agreement doesn't affect local employees. That's what the core agreements of core employees is all about. So we deal with non-union contractors all the time. We're continuously sending apprentices to fulfill the obligations for state on all these projects that are state come under the state mandate of having to have apprentice hours. We're continuously supplying apprentices, all the building trades, to non-union as well as union contractors alike. Is it possible for, one of the things I think that Ms. Sneddon brought up was the requirement of paying into union benefits. You guys do realize that we have to do the same thing for you folks. Right now you have Stanek working on the wastewater treatment plant. We dispatch apprentices. These are guys on the lowest rung of the food chain. They're learning their craft. They're mandated by the state to be on the job site. They're not being paid and they're being forced to pay into their private company's medical insurance, their benefit packages as a matter of law. They're not paying double. That's absurd. They simply pay into what they want and ignore us. That's a fact. So level playing field, it isn't that now. It is on both sides. The term big labor comes up.
Time, so I
think I have his hours. Big labor,
I'm sorry, just pause.
We do 5% of the work.
Will you pause for just a moment? I don't show that you have pooled time. Did you have pooled time with a speaker?
I only have two points, so I'm out of here. Very quickly.
Okay, you're already at 3 minutes, which is beyond the scope. So if someone would like to donate their time, we can pool the time in that way. Okay, thank you. Name, please. Thank you.
You know, that
gives you 2 more minutes.
I won't even need that. The term big labor is being bandied about. We do probably less than 8% of the work. Big labor, how interesting how that becomes convenient, a club to beat us to death with. When the reality is contractors associations are quite a larger club and they represent contractors, not the working people. That's clear. A monopoly on taxpayer-funded projects has been used. A monopoly, yet again, how can a monopoly be created with 6% of the workforce? Doesn't make sense. The term responsible bidder is the last thing that's used on this letter. We like to believe that the responsible bidding includes provisions for local hire, head of household wages, healthcare and retirement options. We also believe that the taxpayer deserves the most qualified worker. At the core of what we're doing, that's what we're talking about, is qualified workers at the highest level rate of tradecraft. I've never seen any system that's more effective than the state-approved building trades apprenticeship programs that are self-funded training facilities that currently exist in our community. They are already here. They're already up and running. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Summer Hodges has pooled time with Erwin Villegas, and that will be followed by Jesse Bishop.
Madam Chair, Councilman, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Erwin Villegas, and I represent Frank Skipper Construction. We are a general contractor here in Santa Barbara, and we've been here for almost 40 years. We are 100% employee-owned, with 100% of our employees living here in Santa Barbara or the Ventura counties. We work with the city of Santa Barbara, a lot of municipalities, the county of Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara City College, Santa Barbara Unified School District. We built multiple exhibits for the Santa Barbara Zoo. We're a qualified historical preservation contractor. We're non-union. We do work for the Music Academy of the West, Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, the Santa Barbara Historical Museum, and the Mission Santa Barbara. We do a lot of work here in town. We use both union and non-union contractors, and the type of work determines the type of contractor that we use. We don't limit it to just one specific contractor, whether it's union or not. We've completed our last project with the city of Santa Barbara in early January of 2018, and their comment to our bonding company was, I would hire Skipper for any project. Having a PLA will stop us, a local contractor, from working on projects in the city we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. You still have over 2 minutes if you'd like to reserve that time, or...
Well, I'll also represent the Santa Barbara Contractors Association, and we are an organization with over 300 members. Most of our members are non-union. Having this public labor agreement will eliminate most of the members that are in our organization who live and work in Santa Barbara. We'd like you to at least do your research and take some time in making this decision and not rush into it like some people would want you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I will reserve that minute and 50 seconds if you find you want to use it later. Jesse Bishop, followed by Viaha Jamalamandaka. VJ.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Bishop. I represent Cal Portland here on the Central Coast. Cal Portland's been in business since 1891 in California and on the Central Coast since 1956, formerly as Union Asphalt. We operate as a union and non-union company in different regions on the West Coast. I'm here today not in support of PLAs. Locally, we are a non-union company in the heavy civil division, and we employ over 270 people that live in the tri-counties. We are local. 95% of our work is public works, including City of Santa Barbara, and we pay our employees prevailing wage even on private work. Our employees receive medical, dental, vision, 401k, quarterly safety bonuses, and awards. Cal Portland's reputation is among the best in the heavy civil industry in the Central Coast, in the tri-counties. The quality discussion should not be had here. Earl Armstrong spoke to it from the building side. I'm speaking to it from the roadway heavy civil side. We are two of the companies that do some of the best quality work in this area, and I don't think anybody can dispute that. As a company that also operates as union in certain regions, as I mentioned, we do not desire to sign separate PLA agreements that have redundant language to specifications and master labor agreements. Some of the items that have already been discussed here are local. Again, we have 270 employees in the Tri-County area. That was the region that was defined by Mrs. Bjork earlier. We do not employ people from Bakersfield. We do not employ people from the Bay Area. If they decide to move here and work within our region, we'd gladly employ them, but we haven't had the need to go outside our area to hire employees. We are local. The benefits you mentioned before, Mrs. Snedden, our employees do receive 401k, medical, dental, as I had mentioned. We would be double paying. If we have to pay into the PLA language, as it's mentioned, into the union trust fund, and our employees don't vest. Okay, keep in mind some of our employees have been here for 25, 30, 40 years. They're not going to work 3 to 5 years on projects just within the city of Santa Barbara. We work in the entire Tri-County area. They are not going to vest. Every hour that they pay into that, they will not get back. The union will keep it. In turn, they will not qualify for a life-changing event to cancel their insurance. They will still work for Cal Portland. I will still have to pay into their fringes. I will still have to pay into their retirement funds, their health and welfare funds, and that will be double paying. That is not competitive. I won't have a choice in that, and if I did, I wouldn't stop paying their benefits anyway. As far as cost, the city of Santa Barbara does not maintain a plethora of competition, especially in the heavy civil arena. Briefly, the contracts in the heavy civil arena, the paving projects, say $1 to $3 million. There's 2, maybe 3 bidders. 3 when Cal Portland has the opportunity to bid if the workload allows, and 2 otherwise. That is not excessive competition. When competition is reduced, costs go up. I urge you to maintain the fair contracting practices that are in place now with prevailing wage laws. Thank you.
Thank you. BJ, followed by Bill Baker.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the committee. My name is Vijaya Jamalamaraka, and I am a retired member. I was formerly a member of the Engineer and Technicians Association. I don't have a dog in this race, but I'm in favor of a comprehensive PLA ordinance for large projects in the city. I urge you to have appropriate safeguards. I mean, we've heard a lot about safeguards that are needed for the PLA. And I urge you to remember to apply the lens of sustainability to all of your actions, and not forget that equity is an important part of sustainability. PLAs are good for workers, especially women, and minorities, veterans, and other underrepresented groups. And you can tailor the PLA ordinance to be specific to Santa Barbara. So I urge you to, I believe PLAs are good for your city too. So do consider moving this forward and then looking at the details. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Baker, followed by Brian Gregory.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Baker. I'm a business representative for Electrical Workers Union Local 413. I'm in support of the proposed community workforce agreement. I'm in support of local hire. Community workforce agreements are fair to union and non-union contractors alike. They go to the lowest qualified bidder, just as they do now, but you get local hire with a community workforce agreement. Let's ensure that our local workforce is taken care of first. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Gregory, followed by Lee Cushman, who has pooled time with Katie Cushman.
Madam Chair, committee members, I'm Brian Gregory, a trustee for the Santa Barbara County Electrical Apprenticeship Program. I just kind of feel like someone needs to point out and stand up and say that trade unions are a really good thing. Done a lot of good for the workers and the communities where they exist. A trade union is an association where workers come together to raise the standard of their profession and to raise the skill set of the workers and to promote safety and, most of all, dignity. Trade unions and PLAs go together because a trade union is like a big temp agency, but it's governed by the workers and it provides all the proper training. And to union workers, prevailing wage is not a carrot. It's the wages we make on all work, not just on city jobs. It's a negotiated rate that union employers are willing to pay all the time on all projects so that they can attract the best quality workers that will be able to afford to raise a family in Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara County. If you're a non-union employer, don't be afraid to try this policy. You will have access to great local workers that will do everything possible to ensure quality on time and on budget. And if you're a tradesperson that lives in Santa Barbara, come to the hiring hall and sign the book. You will be given preference under this policy. If you want a career in the trades, come apply for apprenticeship. This policy can provide that opportunity for you. And I would like to just point out that a lot of the things that are being discussed in the negatives, it's a PLA. It's an agreement that's negotiated. I urge you to negotiate a good one and reap the benefits of a PLA. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Cushman, followed by Jim Smith.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Lee Cushman. I'm with Cushman Contracting. We're a local contractor here in Santa Barbara. We're currently celebrating our 50th anniversary working here in the counties, in the Tri-Counties. Our employees are from the Tri-Counties. We've performed over $50 million worth of work for the city of Santa Barbara, in addition to bidding hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work for you folks. This past year, we performed 4 projects for you, in which we saved you $204,000 over the second bidder. I'm against the PLA. Our workers are all non-union. They're all very loyal. We treat them very well. The 2 issues at hand are the benefits. Our employees will be discriminated against if we work on a PLA, under a PLA. It's been a lot of discussion here about the pension, and that will, I guarantee you, most of our employees will never see that pension. That's wrong. The health plan is the same thing. They'll get jerked around between our health plan, the union's health plan. We won't participate in your PLA. If you choose to do it, we won't participate in it. That's going to hurt your competition. We've done, our biggest job that we've done for you all is $16 million up at the Decatur water treatment plant. We've done your Stearns Wharf when your fire broke out. We were the chosen contractor to do that work over 2 union contractors. It was a rush job. The city council sat down. Public Works interviewed us. City council made the decision to hire us. We won't participate if a PLA is involved. That's unfair to our employees, and that's the reason we won't do it. We'll survive. As company owners, we'll survive. We can get work other places, but we're not going to allow our employees to come here and get discriminated against in both their pension and their health plan. The other big factor in a PLA that hasn't been discussed much here is the hiring procedures in the core group. We cannot bring our core group of guys to do a PLA job. Staff hit on it a little bit on page 5. They've done an excellent job discussing it, but we can't bring our core group of guys here. We can bring a few guys, and then we have to supplement with guys. And with that said, how do we bid a project when we don't know the individuals and their capabilities? So it puts us at a huge disadvantage. Back to the cost. The staff didn't have time to really dig into the cost with regards to what is this going to cost you from a competitive standpoint. They've established a cost of $300,000 to $450,000 for administrative costs. But from a competitive standpoint, over the years, I brought it up earlier, we've done 4 jobs for you this year. We've saved you $200,000, $204,000 over the second bidder. That second bidder could have very well been another non-union contractor. I didn't go up to the next union bidder. So you're going to lose, another very important fact of your staff report is 66% of your work is done by non-union contractors. You're going to lose that. You're going to lose competition, and your prices are going to go up. I really don't understand why a PLA is so important and why we're rushing to it. The union contractors are competitive. You've heard them say they're qualified, they're good workers. So why do we need a PLA? I don't understand that. The 66% of your non-union contractors, out of that, I think the staff report said 60% are within 40 miles. So it's the same workforce. All they're trying to do is push the non-union workforce into their books, basically. And that doesn't make any sense for the city. It's just going to drive your prices up because a lack of competition. We have a $77 million bonding capacity. We're perfectly capable of doing your largest projects. A $25 million limit is basically, again, taking away competition. in conclusion, your costs are going to go up, your competition is going to go down. I don't understand what your goal is by trying to push this PLA. And hopefully I'll listen some more and I'll grow to understand it, but I don't think it's going to do what you hope it to do. And I'll reserve any time I have left, or if you have any questions, I'll be glad to field them.
Jim Smith, followed by Rich Knighton.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Smith. I am a citizen of Santa Barbara, born and raised here. I am not a contractor. I'm not a member of a union, so why am I here? I'm a citizen who's concerned. During the evenings, to get to sleep, I watch the public access channel and I watch your city council meetings, and I usually fall asleep. But I did not on September 25. On September 25, I saw Mr. Hart get up and expound upon the PLAs and all of the benefits. And I was very confused, and I thought it was the fog of the evening wine. Well, the next morning I looked at it again. Didn't make any sense to me, so I studied it. And after I studied it, it still didn't make any sense to me. And then I got the staff report, and things started to make a little bit more sense to me. Mr. Hart says higher pay and benefits. Incorrect. We've heard how that works. I urge you to look at your staff report, page 6. Increased local employment. I know a little bit about the law, being an attorney. That's not correct. You can't have preferences in hiring. Take a look at your staff report, page 5. Better quality, such an insult. 10% of the workforce is union. So you're insulting 90% of the workforce, claiming that if you're not union, you can't do a quality project. Let me point out a couple things, because Mr. Hart's memory fails him. Chapala 1, Sevilla, now called, the high-rise apartment complex down at the end of Chapala Street. Everybody was so ecstatic it was going to go to union workers, and did go to union workers. In fact, there's a plaque outside that says, "This is the home of the Union Hall." Well, I was going to buy a unit in there. I didn't. Millions and millions of dollars of defects, all handed to us by union workers. How about the biggest fiasco in the state of California, probably the country, the Millennial Tower in San Francisco, 100% union. And what did they deliver to us? A skyscraper that's in 9 years has sunk 17 inches and is tilting by 14 inches. There's no assurance of quality with unions. I'm sure they do very fine work, but I also know private industry does excellent work. It's a red herring. And so what are you handing us, the citizens?
Final thought, please.
You're handing us a cost of $300,000 to $450,000 with absolutely no tangible benefit for me, the citizen, and the other citizens. I would expect more of the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Rich Knighton. Did you have pooled time, Rich?
No.
Mr. Knighton? Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for your time. Some good points that were made here prior to my comment, but I think it's the big picture here is what you need to look at. A lot of these contractors who are against this aren't educated when it comes to a project labor agreement. To be quite clear, that's why we have so many compliance departments within our trades to make sure that these contractors are playing on an even field. And when project labor agreements are established, these contractors have a block wall to basically not do what they want with the monies that are being paid to them to do the contracting work. I have lists of contractors cheating their workers out of prevailing wages and benefits. And I'd be happy to show you these findings. Also, too, just like to touch real quick on apprenticeship. Santa Barbara County has one of the highest, homeless rates for young adults. Again, what this does is this is going to create opportunities for individuals like those in all aspects of the county and city to have an opportunity to start with a career, start fresh, what have you. We all have different backgrounds, but this, again, trying to get you to think big picture, this is going to create a lot of opportunities for these residents and future residents and their families. And I'd like to touch, too, state indentured apprenticeship program. We are approved by the state. These folks are not. There is no certification. There is nothing of that sort, especially when it comes from the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment period. It is now to the Ordinance Committee for deliberation.
Can I hand my time over?
Yes, you may. You still had 2 minutes left, so if you would like to have one final speaker, we will need you to fill out a speaker slip.
I did fill out a speaker slip.
Okay. And if you could remind us of your name, please, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Sharon Fritz. I am the operations manager of Action Roofing, co-owner of Action Energy, and board member of the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. Action Roofing has been in business in Santa Barbara for 34 years. We employ 115 employees, which means that we contribute financially to this community. Our business does bid prevailing wage jobs. We are not a union shop. We do bid prevailing wage work. We pay prevailing wage rates. We don't cheat on the prevailing wage rates. We try to follow every rule that we possibly can follow, every one that we know of. We have to submit certified payroll reports or else we don't get paid. We've done work for the DOT. We've done work for the city of Santa Barbara. And the curious thing is roofing is a non-apprenticeable trade. It's one of the very few. I have requested apprentices to come from the JATC, which is in Pomona. That's the closest one. And I have never once had anyone show up. And the reason is the base wage for roofing employees from the union is $11 an hour in Santa Barbara, in the county of Santa Barbara. No one comes here for that much money. We pay all of our employees already more than what the base rate is, plus the fringe benefit. So that said, the other issue that I have with this is that as a licensed contractor, we adhere to the guidelines of the State Contractors License Board, the Uniform Building Code of the state, county, and city building departments, and we follow the material manufacturer's installation guidelines as well. We have to do this. This is our job as a licensed contractor. On September 30th, Councilman Gregg was quoted in Newshawk as saying, "This is really a generational opportunity to make sure that the projects we build going forward save taxpayer dollars by being quality construction of the highest degree." What does that mean? The construction work performed by a non-union shop is of questionable quality? We've been doing this for 34 years. This is what we do for a living, and we take pride in our work. You can't stay in business if you do really bad work. The contractors who built Santa Barbara as we know it, a lot of them are in this room, and they do quality work. So passing this ordinance would only just be a further insult and certainly no guarantee of quality construction. I just really urge you to take your time, look at the entire thing before you pass it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That now concludes public comment, and it is to the committee for deliberation. Mayor Pro Tem Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, like the one speaker, I think it was Mr. Smith, who is an attorney as opposed to in the trades, I am also not an expert in any of this. But what I do represent and what I do see is an obligation to the taxpayers, particularly since we just passed Measure C, and I was in a position to try to convince a lot of people to raise the sales tax, and they didn't expect to hear that from me, but I did because I believe it, and I believe this community needs the public projects. What I don't see the need for necessarily is an extra layer of what is already a rather onerous process to get things done in this town. And I do know of a lot of public projects that were done by our private contractors. Mr. Armstrong happens to be here. Representative from Mr. Skipper's outfit is here. people that are highly vested in the community, people's employees live in the community, own homes, work, spend money, raise children, do all the things that people in the communities do. I realize, I think Mr. Henschke was relatively clear, I think, in terms of what could and couldn't happen in terms of local requirements. You couldn't put a zip code requirement, as I understand it, on an agreement. So I'm a little discouraged by how the agenda item was first presented. I know that's part of the normal nomenclature, but why here, why now? PLAs have been around for a long time, and if they were really the only way to go for public projects, and a lot of public works gets done in the state, why isn't every community doing them? Why is there scrutiny within the county, within Goleta? Why doesn't everybody around here have a PLA? And I really don't know. I don't think there's a discrimination against union employees, but I do see a PLA as potentially discriminating against non-union employees. And that's very bothersome. But I think it's also hard for me to look at Frank Skipper and Earl Armstrong and say, your people have not done quality work. To look at the Cushman organization and say, your people are obviously inferior to other people. It doesn't make any sense to me. I've been here for a long time, and they're people I know. They're members of the community. So I think, to me, at least from what I understand of PLAs after today, which is, like I said, I'm very not expert in this at all, but they seem exclusionary, where the system we have today, the option C, as one speaker brought up initially, of status quo, is inclusionary. We can still use, on public projects, union help where needed. There's no exclusion for that. If to exclude on the other side, add another layer of contract work, have another layer of administrative work. We have our engineers right here that do this stuff. We have our legal over here that do this stuff already. And to lay on another layer just does not make sense to me at this time. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a recommendation that we forward an option C to council. I'm going to make that a motion that says basically status quo. Thank you.
I will second that motion, and we can continue discussion. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you. Can I get clarification from staff on something?
Absolutely. You can continue to ask questions and deliberate.
So if we choose to go with option B, we can still negotiate and fine-tune the stipulations that will go into that. Is that correct after this point, going into next year?
Chair Sneddon, Committee Member Gutierrez, the ordinance authorizes the project labor agreement. The project labor agreement, the ordinance is actually the easy part. The project labor agreement and figuring out the details of that will be really the guts of it. So, yes, you can authorize any of those options, and we can still continue to work to refine what you actually want to contain in a project labor agreement.
Okay, thank you. So I'm when it comes to being certified in a field, whether it's a chef in a restaurant, a professor at a college, or an award-winning filmmaker for a major studio, there's certification that goes into that. There's training. There's a process, and that is something that's really important when it comes to the type of work and buildings and maintenance that we're going to be applying to the future of this community. And to be able to hire people that live and grew up in this area and offer them an opportunity to go through that certification, I feel is a major plus, and something that honestly is needed. I appreciate everything that you've all done, but I feel like unions have gone kind of like it's being treated as if it's a four-letter word, but when I think about what an association is or an organization, it seems like it's just a union by another name. But the thing that stands out to me the most is that, today of all days, and it's been brought up several times, is that unions are governed by the workers. they have a voice in the way that the project is being run. And that, I believe, should mean a lot to a lot of us here. So I will not be supporting Committee Member Rouse's motion, and I will support option B from staff.
Okay, I'd like to add a few comments here as well. I very much appreciate your perspective, Councilman Gutierrez, and to that I would ask the question of, well, what about the 700 apprentices that we heard from different electrical contractors? And so in my mind, we have many different avenues currently for quality work, for local control of our city and how to handle taxpayer dollars, which is very important. I see the current mode of operation is not an either or. It's not championing one group or another group or type of worker. And I very much trust that our staff provides an excellent process for handling bids, for evaluating the quality of service and work that is provided. And through that mechanism, we have 44% union jobs awarded. We are supporting apprentice programs and union work. I truly believe in the apprentice programs. To me, they seem that they are working. There are wonderful stories from the last time that we met of individuals whose lives had changed because of the apprenticeship program, who had gotten an education and certification through one particular route available. And in the same way that there are different options for a person to choose in education or different options to choose in what type of work to do, the current mechanism that we use supports that personal choice. There are many benefits to joining a union, many, many benefits. That's a person, an individual's personal choice, whether to choose that option or to work for a company that's been here 40, 50 years, and I would say also provides quality work on a local basis. I don't feel it is for me to say which type of worker we should be giving preferential treatment to. I think the current bidding process works. It works as not an either-or option, but supports both. Supports local businesses, local workers, which we very much need to be doing. It's a very hard time in Santa Barbara right now to have a local business, to keep a local business going. If this in any way undermines that effort, I see that as a challenge to what we're hoping to accomplish on the city level as city council members. I believe in education. I believe in the apprentice programs. I think they are truly life-changing opportunities and experiences. I also believe in other avenues to achieve those goals through other forms of education as well. Mostly I believe in local control. I fight for that on almost every decision I can come up with, that I think it is in the city's best interest, our residents, our taxpayers, Measure C, to allow our staff to continue to have the wiggle room to be able to take the lowest bidder, who then does hire from the union halls and do provide jobs through union mechanisms as well. I really think that our current mode of operation is really the best of both worlds, of being able to support locals. I am interested in coming back with further recommendations on the preference, or alternative local hire approaches. I think that would be the actual problem that was trying to be addressed in the initial memo. I share Councilmember Rouse's maybe frustration that the original memo was put forward as a local hire preference, which I absolutely support. I think that can happen through both union options and through non-union options. I don't see it as our position to be favoring one or the other. I would like to favor local hires to the extent that the law allows. So with that, I will be supporting Councilmember Rouse's motion. Is there any further deliberation? Councilmember Rouse?
Just one quick comment that something's kind of hanging in the air. This is bothering me, and that's the basic idea that employees and their voices and employers, and I'm a small employer. Anybody who doesn't think employees have a voice has never been a small employer. But as a small employer, I can speak for all of my colleagues out there, and I don't know about some of the bigger guys, the bigger contractors, but I know some of the ones I know personally feel the same way. Our doors don't open without our employees. We value our employees. Our employees become family, and that sometimes gets lost in these kind of discussions. So, going back to what's fair and what's not fair, like I said, I'm not an expert about what goes on in the trades and contracting and whatnot. I do know my responsibility to taxpayers, but as an employer who really cares about his employees, and I know my colleagues out there feel the exact same way, I feel confident that what we do today is the right way to go.
Thank you, Councilmember Rouse. Councilmember Gutierrez?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I would like to add an additional comment that I do believe our city does very quality work, and that is through the teamwork of both union and non-union designers. We've had an extensive list here of local projects that we're very proud of, and I think that this doesn't preclude either of those options. Are we ready to take a vote? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Sorry, can you repeat what the motion is or what we're voting on?
Councilmember Rouse made a motion to forward option C to council. Status quo. Sneddon seconds.
I'm sorry. May I amend that or add to that motion to bring recommendations for alternative local hire approaches, or a separate motion for that?
Well, Chair Sneddon, if it's a recommendation of the council to direct us to come back and get into local hire, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So can I add? So
yes, please.
Under option B, couldn't that still be negotiated?
Committee Member Gutierrez, I'm not sure I understand the question. Staff will return to council with whatever recommendation your committee comes up with today for a discussion at the full council.
Okay, thank you.
May we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Gutierrez.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Rouse.
Aye.
Madam Chair Sneddon.
Yes.
And
that
Chair Sneddon,
yes.
I'm sorry, this is
Maybe 5 seconds.
Maybe 5 seconds late, but I want to confirm with the maker of the motion that your friendly amendment about local hire was included in the motion.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. City Attorney, I took that as a direction to staff as much as anything else.
Yes. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.